Imagine living for years with the pain of a loss that shaped who you are, carrying with you only the memories and a few belongings that remained. Now, picture encountering a stranger on the street wearing a watch that belonged to the person you believed had been dead for decades. That's exactly what happened to Letícia, a successful lawyer whose well-organized life was turned upside down in an instant. What began as an apparently impossible incident soon unfolded into a story filled with secrets, lies, and a truth that would change everything. Isn't that how life surprises us? When we least expect it, a missing piece appears and completely changes the way we see the puzzle. Letícia had no idea she was about to dive into a tale where the police, family, and time itself would take center stage. But what would you do when faced with such an intriguing discovery? The watch, a symbol of pain and remembrance, now seemed to be the key to something much greater. Stay with me, and I'll show you how this unexpected journey can transform even the deepest wounds into new beginnings. Letícia lived her meticulously planned routine, but no amount of preparation could brace her for that encounter in the city center. A street vendor, young and unassuming, wore on his wrist a watch she would never forget. It wasn't just an object but a living memory of her late boyfriend, Tadeu, whose death had marked her journey. Like a gust of cold air, that detail invaded her mind and brought her back to the past. A mix of disbelief and urgency took hold of her. Life, sometimes, throws clues at you and waits for you to decipher them. She crafted a conversation, careful not to reveal the whirlwind of emotions behind her rehearsed smile. "I like your watch. It's vintage, isn't it?" The young man, Tiago, didn't seem to grasp the intensity of her question and casually replied, "It was my father's." That response hit Letícia like a punch to the stomach. Tadeu never had children, or so she thought. The impact of that encounter was so profound that, for the first time in years, she felt an old flame reignite, the need for answers. Like a good detective in a mystery, Letícia began to connect dots that hadn't existed before. Tiago revealed he had inherited the watch after his father's death, adding layers of uncertainty to the story. Could it be a coincidence? The truth is, coincidences often feel too perfect to be random. The memory of the last time she saw that watch, sitting on Tadeu's bedside table, haunted her mind. Sometimes, a small detail can rewrite an entire story. And what else could she do but investigate? If you were in Leticia's place, what would you do? She knew the police might be an option, but she also felt this was a personal journey first and foremost. Life often confronts us with dilemmas that test our courage to explore, even when the path ahead seems murky. She recalled how her career as a lawyer demanded attention to detail and determination. This would be no different. If life teaches us anything, it's that objects have stories, and those stories often intertwine with ours in unexpected ways. The presence of that watch was almost a scream that something needed to be unearthed, a secret waiting to be uncovered. Tiago, with his carefree demeanor, was a central piece of this puzzle. But did he know it? Life, at times, places unlikely allies in our path. Letícia realized this wouldn't be easy. Young Tiago seemed uneasy with her probing questions, and she knew she couldn't scare him off. Her strategy would be to earn his trust, something that can't be rushed. Just like in a legal investigation, every move would need to be calculated. "Tell me more about your father," she said, trying not to come off too invasive. The answer would come, but the watch remained a silent reminder that time was at stake. That night at home, she stared at a box of keepsakes she had kept from Tadeu. Photographs, notes, and, curiously, the absence of the watch she had always thought lost in the accident that claimed his life. How could it have ended up with Tiago? Curiosity was no longer an option. It was a necessity. With this in mind, she decided to take the next step, even without knowing where it would lead. After all, the past, when revisited, can reveal far more than we are prepared to face. The next morning, Letícia woke up with a clear decision. It was time to unravel the mystery surrounding the watch and young Tiago. Her training as a lawyer was a natural guide, but now the case was personal. She began drafting a plan, gathering information, and building a timeline. Have you ever tried organizing a problem on paper? She knew every detail could hold the key, from the origins of the watch to the connection between Tiago and Tadeu. Nothing would be left to chance. Her first stop was a local police station. Letícia sought the police's support, even though she knew it wouldn't be simple. "A watch isn't evidence of a crime, ma'am," the officer said, almost mockingly. But Letícia, as always, was persistent. She understood that in investigations, persistence could open doors where logic alone might not suffice. Have you ever been in a situation where only your determination kept things moving forward? While the police hesitated to get involved, Letícia decided to press on alone, reaching out to friends in the justice system. A prosecutor colleague mentioned the name Katia, a woman with an enigmatic history and an unclear past. Something about the description set off alarms in Leticia's mind. Isn't it fascinating how sometimes information seems to fall into our hands like puzzle pieces waiting to be assembled? Every clue she uncovered seemed to guide her next steps. Tiago, meanwhile, became an even more intriguing figure. Letícia watched him from a distance, trying to gather more details about his life. He appeared to be an ordinary young man, but the answers to her questions were certainly not on the surface. During a casual conversation, he mentioned his mother, Katia, who had always been reserved about his father's past. That wasn't just a detail, it was a starting point. And when life hands you clues like that, do you ignore them or follow them? Letícia began to feel the weight of the secret that tied To-Do, the watch, and Tiago together. Her nights were filled with speculation and imagined scenarios, while her days pushed her onto the streets in search of answers. The investigation wasn't just about the watch, it was about what it represented. Something inside her insisted there was far more at stake than lost memories. When we seek the truth, it's as though the universe conspires to show us the next step. As her search progressed, she encountered people who hindered rather than helped. A local shopkeeper who knew Katia described her as untrustworthy. Others portrayed her as a woman willing to do anything to protect her family. But was Katia a villain or merely someone trapped by a complicated past? Letícia knew she would have to confront her, but she couldn't rush it. In investigations, patience is more than a virtue, it's survival. Each day, Letícia felt closer to something significant. Her conversations with Tiago and the information about Katia left little room for doubt. But the bigger question loomed: how far was she willing to go? Meanwhile, the watch remained on Tiago's wrist, a symbol of all the answers she sought. The next step would be decisive, but Letícia knew this was only the beginning. Katia was a woman with a commanding presence and an evasive gaze, and Letícia quickly realized that dealing with her would be a challenge of its own. Their first meeting was laden with tension, like a chess game where every word was a calculated move. "I don't know what you're talking about," Katia said when questioned about the watch and To-Do. But Letícia sensed that this resistance hid something much bigger. Isn't it curious how silence sometimes speaks louder than words? After days of persistence, Katia finally relented, but what she revealed left Letícia reeling. To-Do hadn't died as everyone believed. Katia admitted to faking his death to protect him from a debt that would have put his life in danger. "I did what was necessary to save my family," she said, almost as if seeking redemption. Stunned, Letícia saw her image of To-Do reshaped by this new perspective. What would you do if you discovered that all your pain was built on a lie? But that wasn't all. Katia confessed another, even more shocking secret. Tiago was To-Do and Leticia's son, born from a relationship abruptly cut short by the supposed death. The revelation hit like a bombshell, dismantling everything Letícia thought she knew about her own life. Imagine suddenly discovering you have a child you've never met. The impact was so profound that she could barely process Katia's words. It was as if time had stopped. Katia explained that, fearing for everyone's safety, she had hidden Leticia's pregnancy and raised Tiago as her own son. "I thought I was doing the right thing, but maybe I destroyed more than I saved," she said with a bitter sincerity. For Letícia, this was more than a revelation. It was a turning point that upended her memories, her identity, and her emotions. Isn't it incredible how the truth, even when painful, has the power to reorder everything? At the same time, Letícia felt both anger and compassion for Katia. The woman she had judged as cold and manipulative now appeared to be someone who had made extreme decisions to protect those she loved. Sometimes, we make choices that we only understand when it's too late, Letícia thought. Isn't that true for all of us? What seems like betrayal can sometimes be a distorted act of love. The complexity of people can surprise us at every turn. Letícia knew she couldn't change the past, but the revelation that Tadeu was alive and that Tiago was her son ignited a new mission in her heart. How could she recover lost time? How could she rebuild bonds that had never had the chance to form? These questions swirled in her mind like a song on repeat. But one thing was certain, she needed to find Tadeu. A reunion was inevitable. Yet, the story wasn't complete. Letícia felt there were more buried truths waiting to surface. The watch, which at first seemed like a mere detail, was now a symbol of an interrupted love and a family that never had the chance to exist. With renewed determination, she prepared for the next step, confronting Tadeu and discovering what destiny still had in store for all of them. The moment to reunite with Tadeu was something Letícia could hardly imagine, yet she knew it would simply happen. With Kadia's help, she finally discovered where he had been living, a small town surrounded by mountains, where he seemed to have rebuilt a quiet life. As she stood at the door of a modest house, she felt the weight of years of silence and secrets. And you, how would you react upon seeing someone you believed to be dead, carrying so much of your past? Tadeu appeared at the door with an expression of surprise that quickly turned into a mix of guilt and collapse. "Letícia?" he said, as if doubting his own eyes. For a moment, silence spoke louder than any words could. His gaze fell to the watch on her wrist. Yes, she had retrieved it from Tiago, who had agreed to hand it over as a symbol of the reunion. It was as if that small object carried the entire story that needed to be told. The reunion was emotional but not without pain. Letícia didn't hold back. "Do you have any idea what I went through all these years?" Tadeu explained his debt, the danger, and the choices Kadia had made to protect them. It was a conversation filled with emotions, tears, and accusations. Yet, as the night wore on, resentment began to give way to mutual understanding. Isn't life like that? Sometimes, forgiveness starts when we can see another's pain beyond our own. Tiago, who had until then remained on the sidelines, was finally called into the house. The young man looked as lost as the two adults before him. "Were my parents?" he asked incredulously. The answer came not in words but in an embrace that shook them all. A moment of pure emotion that words could never fully describe. Imagine hugging someone who is a part of you but whom you never had the chance to know. That night was a mix of memories, revelations, and plans for the future. Letícia, Tadeu, and Tiago began piecing together a story that had been interrupted, each bringing their truths and pains to the table. Rebuilding a connection that never existed wouldn't be easy, but they were willing to try. And you? Have you ever faced an impossible second chance? It's in those moments that you truly learn the value of time and love. Tadeu showed Letícia how he had spent the past years, living far from everyone and everything. He carried not only the scars of his choices but also the hope for a better future. Tiago, for his part, was fascinated and confused. How could he balance the life he knew with the truth he had just discovered? The answer, they all agreed, would come with time. After all, the watch symbolized exactly that time, even when lost, can be rediscovered. But there was more to say, more loose ends to tie up. Letícia knew that rebuilding a family would be a long journey, full of highs and lows. Yet, in that moment, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. The past had brought pain, but the future seemed promising. And as the sun rose over the small town, they knew this story was far from over. After so many secrets unveiled and emotional reunions, Letícia, Tadeu, and Tiago were ready to face their most difficult challenge: building a life together. It wasn't just about overcoming past hurts, but about finding ways to integrate the past into the present. Letícia knew she couldn't simply erase the years of distance, so she decided to start small, creating family moments. Sometimes, new beginnings lie in the little gestures, like an impromptu dinner or a casual conversation. Tadeu, for his part, sought to regain Leticia's trust and Tiago's affection. He devoted himself to rebuilding their bonds, starting with being present in the small, day-to-day things. Imagine a father teaching his son to fix something around the house or taking him fishing, simple acts, yet heavy with meaning. For Tadeu, The watch that had started it all now symbolized the time he was reclaiming. Tiago, though still confused, began to see a new version of himself. Discovering that Tadeu and Letícia were his parents brought questions but also a deep sense of belonging. Gradually, he began to accept that, while life hadn't followed a conventional path, there was still room for happiness. "I didn't know I wanted this until now," he admitted to Letícia during one conversation. "Isn't it funny how we sometimes find something we didn't even know we were searching for?" Of course, the process wasn't easy. Old wounds often resurfaced, and arguments were inevitable. Letícia and Tadeu had to learn how to express their frustrations without causing further harm. They turned to family therapy as a way to navigate their emotions, something many families discover to be invaluable when facing challenging situations. Have you ever considered seeking external help to resolve internal conflicts? Sometimes, having a mediator can be the key to finding peace. Katia also had to find her place in this new dynamic. No longer the keeper of secrets, she became an integral part of the story. Her role shifted from protector to advisor, someone who now supported Letícia and Tadeu in their decisions. Isn't it remarkable how, even after so many mistakes, we can find ways to be useful and present? Katia's journey of redemption was as important as that of any other character. Over time, life began to settle into a new rhythm. Letícia returned to her work as a lawyer with a renewed perspective on what truly mattered. Tadeu started a small business in town, something that connected him to both his past and his future. Tiago, now more confident, decided to pursue studies to follow in his father's footsteps, further strengthening the bond within the family. The challenges didn't disappear, but what had once been a collection of broken pieces was now beginning to form something whole. Their story didn't have a perfect ending, because real life rarely does. But that didn't matter. What they had now was a chance, an opportunity to build something new together. The watch that had started their journey was placed in a frame in the living room, a symbol of the time that had been lost but also of the time that still lay ahead. Because, in the end, time doesn't wait, but it always allows space for a fresh start. The story of Letícia, Tadeu, and Tiago reminds us of something profound. Time can be cruel, but it also offers opportunities for new beginnings. What if the watch you carry, whether literal or metaphorical, could help you uncover your own secrets or past pains? Ask yourself, what's hidden in the drawers of your history? What encounters or discoveries could change the course of your life? You might need to face hard truths or rebuild lost connections, but remember, just like them, you too can transform scars into paths of hope. Now, I want to hear from you. Is there something you feel you need to recover or forgive? Comment below. Your words could be the start of a new chapter. And if you want to keep learning about how to face challenges and create new opportunities, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, you'll never be alone on your journey of growth and discovery. Let's keep this conversation going together.